Welcome to the Monday edition of the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You see the website there, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all there at Panther-Lair.com, and of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans talking all day, every day about everything going on in Pitt sports. We produce a ton of content at Panther-Lair.com, articles, interviews, video, photo slideshows, analysis, evaluations, just all kinds of stuff. Lots of content at Panther-Lair.com. And you can read it all and then go to the message boards and talk about it with other Pitt fans. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Make sure you go and check out that site. It was busy all through the weekend. It was buzzing all weekend. It's going to be buzzing all week. And as long as Pitt continues to win, it's going to, I shouldn't say as long as they continue to win, because when they lose, sometimes it's buzzing even more than when they win. But regardless, it's the place to be if you want to get in conversation and interaction with other Pitt fans. And of course, we have our content right here on YouTube, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. This Morning Pitt series, we do it every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Every morning we release a new video, a new Morning Pitt video, just kind of giving you everything you need to know about Pitt sports, all the main talking points, all the main topics, all the main themes, everything to get you ready for the day. We started out over the summer just doing, on Mondays, doing the weekend recap. We get you ready for the week. Now we do it every day and get you ready for the day. And so certainly starting this during football season, there's plenty to talk about. And we have plenty to talk about this week in the aftermath of Pitt's win at Western Michigan. Make sure you like this video, though, and hit that subscribe button. That's big for us, and we appreciate it. We enjoy doing these videos, but we like getting that feedback as well, that positive reinforcement. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as we move into this new week here on September 19th, Monday, 2022. And, we're about 2 days out from Pitt's win at Western Michigan, 34-13, victory on the road. And, all the storylines that go into that game. You're not tuning into this show, this video here on a Monday morning and saying, hey, what happened in the game? I haven't heard anything about it. You can find plenty about the game. You probably watched it, and if you didn't, you've gotten plenty of recaps since then. And so, we skip over the preliminaries and the details, and just as we sit here on Monday morning, roughly 2 days out from the game, I got to say that for the most part, I have sort of the same reaction I had after the game. After the game was over, we went live right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com for our Panther-Lair postgame show. Went live. It was about a half hour, 45 minutes after the game ended. And there was a lot of conversation, a lot of back and forth. I talked for a while. People were filling up the chat screen with comments and questions. And we had a lot of interaction that way. And I had sort of my instant kind of reaction to the game, what I was thinking and feeling immediately after the game. But after dwelling on it yesterday and then, waking up again this morning, I kind of feel the same way. That the key to that whole game, the goal going in, the objective for Pitt was survival. Nothing else, not style points, not revenge, not any of the other motivations you can have for a game, aside from that very simple goal of survival. And we know they were facing a lot of adversity. There were a lot of challenges in this game, most notably not having the starting quarterback available. Going with Nate Yarnell, the redshirt freshman. You know all the backstory there, but I feel like we have to keep repeating it because he hasn't played in a football game in 3 years prior to that game on Saturday night. And so you go into that situation, you're going on the road in a primetime game against a MAC opponent, but one that you would think would be excited to have a Power 5 team coming to town, although the crowd didn't necessarily look like it at Western Michigan Stadium there. But going into a difficult situation, and you're going with a redshirt freshman quarterback who hasn't played before. And hasn't played in a long time, and really has only started like 6 games, since he started high school. And so it's a challenging situation. It's challenging for Nate Yarnell himself, challenging for the rest of the players on offense. Some of whom, like Kanate Mumfield on the screen there, are going to have to sit through long periods of inactivity in terms of touching the ball. It's challenging for Frank Cignetti to try and coordinate an offense or in that kind of situation. And it's challenging for the defensive players who probably went into that game feeling like they needed to play absolutely perfect and maybe even beyond perfect. It wouldn't be enough to just hold Western Michigan to 13 or fewer points or hold them with only 1 touchdown or less or something like that. Pitt's defensive players probably felt, and I think a lot of us probably felt the same way, that simply pitching a shutout might not be enough, that they would need to actually go out and score points themselves. And, as we sit here and we're kind of recapping, not recapping, but 2 days later, just kind of going over some of the biggest plays in the game. And I wrote this on Panther-Lair.com. Marquez Williams pick 6 on Western Michigan's second drive to make the score 10-0. Obviously, a pick 6 is going to be a huge play, but that particular pick 6 was absolutely enormous because it gave Pitt a touchdown cushion. So even when Western Michigan got a field goal, it was still a 1-touchdown game. It was still a 10-3 game, and Pitt kicked a field goal to make it 10 points again, and Western Michigan chipped away with another field goal, but it was still 13-6. It was still, it created a touchdown cushion that I think allowed Pitt to keep playing the way they were. If you don't have that happen there, and say it's just going back and forth, and Western, it's still just 3-0, right? Instead of that, without that Marquez Williams touchdown. And then Western Michigan kicks a field goal, now it's 3-3, and Pitt kicks a field goal, it's 6-3, and Western Michigan kicks one, it's 6-6. That could have been the situation at halftime. It could have been a 6-6 game at halftime if not for that interception return for a touchdown. And that's probably what the defense felt like they needed to do. They needed to put up points themselves. And ultimately, I think they did need to do that. And like I said, I think Marquez Williams scoring that pick 6 allowed Pitt to keep playing the way they wanted to play and running the offense the way they wanted to run the offense. And quite simply, if you were going to sum up the offensive philosophy, it was survival. Don't make mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. That was priority number 1. I think the coaches went into this game believing, and we can discuss whether they were right to believe it, but they went into this game believing that they could keep Western Michigan in check with their defense and do it well enough that they could be very safe on offense so that they didn't lose the game with turnovers on offense. Now, I'm like a lot of you. I don't like when coaches coach scared. I don't like when coaches play scared or sort of, to use a Mike Tomlin phrase, live in their fears. I used to criticize Dave Wanstead a lot for being so conservative and so worried about mistakes. What I always said is, look, if you play the whole game just completely petrified of that one mistake and terrified that one mistake is going to sink you, and you play super safe and super conservative because you're trying to avoid that one mistake, then if a point comes in the game where you do make a mistake, where you do have a critical error, it can sink you because you haven't really given yourself a chance to build a cushion there because you've been playing it so safe. So I'm the first to be, I lead, I'm all about that train of thought. I'm the first to say it. I'm right there with you. But there are some situations where you can gamble on being able to pull it off and you might end up being successful. And I think Saturday night was a game where it worked. The game plan worked. And I don't just mean the offensive game plan. I mean the overall approach to this game of we're going to play really tough defense and we're not going to make mistakes on offense. And it got to a point where they could probably, where their offense started wearing Western Michigan down. They obviously ran the ball well in the fourth quarter. Izzy Benacanda, 9 carries for 61 yards in the fourth quarter. Vincent Davis, 6 for 53. I mean, those two guys combined, 114 yards in the fourth quarter on 15 carries. Yeah, 114. Yeah. That's impressive production in the fourth quarter, and it's a testament to the Pitt's offense and offensive line wearing down Western Michigan's defense. Now, there's some out there who would say, you can't do this every game. This offense is not going to win every game. You're not going to be able to win games in the ACC playing offense like this. To which I say, you're right. You're not going to win games in the ACC playing offense like this unless you're Paul Johnson in Georgia Tech, and Pitt is not. But I would also say there's sort of a logical fallacy in even making that claim, of even feeling the need to point out that you're not going to win the ACC playing offense like this. There's a fallacy inherent there because I don't know why you think they would try to play offense like this. I don't know why you would think they would even try to run an offense like this with 52 rushing attempts and 12 pass attempts in the game. They're not going to go try to do that against Georgia Tech or North Carolina or Miami. That's not going to be the goal going into the game against Virginia or Virginia Tech or Duke. That's not going to be the objective when they host Syracuse or they go to Louisville. The goal there will be to be to have more balanced offense. This was not a balanced offense on Saturday night. All right. What we saw the first two games was more balanced. And actually, if there was any imbalance in the offense the first two games, it was an imbalance in favor of the pass, where they were like 87 pass plays and less than 60 run plays through the first two games. Saturday night's game threw it all out of whack on those season-long numbers when you're looking at run versus pass. But that's because of the situation and because of the circumstances and dealing with what they were dealing with at the quarterback position. So they played it safe. But that's not what Frank Cignetti's offense is. And I keep seeing these criticisms of Cignetti's offense and talking about it's Stone Age offense, or it's not a modern college offense. I mean, they're throwing the ball a lot. I mean, the numbers back that up. And you can look, like I said, when you adjust the rushing and passing totals from the first two games, you adjust for sacks and scrambles and all of that, you end up with an offense that's like 80-some pass and 60-some rushes. 80-some passes and 60-some rushes. So the goal for Frank Cignetti is to have a balanced offense. It's not to have a run all the time offense. It's to have a balanced offense. Saturday night was not balanced, but that was by design because they did what they felt was the safest, most reliable approach. And here's the trick. We're going to do it again next week or something like it. If it's up to me, and it's not, but if it was, and we'll hear from Pat Narduzzi later today, actually this morning in a couple hours, and we'll see what he says about it. I'm guessing he won't say much, but if it was up to me, if he asked me, if he was like, Chris, what do you think we should do on Saturday against Rhode Island? I would say rest Slovis, rest Baldonado, rest Marquez Williams, rest any of those guys who didn't travel, Owen Drexel and Devin Danielson, and Deion Hayes, assuming he was hurt and that's why he didn't travel, Rodney Hammond, rest those guys, rest Deslin Alexandra, rest Gabe Hoy, rest them all. You should be able to beat Rhode Island even without those guys because you just beat Western Michigan on the road without those guys. You should be able to beat Rhode Island at home without those guys. And I would actually almost even go a step further and say put Izzy Abanikanda on the bench too. He just had 54 carries over the last two games, something like that. 54, I think it was. Career high. No, 56 maybe. Career high total. I mean, he's never had that many carries in two games. And he's produced, he's put up really good numbers from all that workload, but he's never had a workload like that in his career at Pitt. And you're now, you're entering, you've got this game against Rhode Island, and then you're in that 8-game slate of ACC games where every game is absolutely crucial. Not that the first 4 didn't matter, but these are the real games. And you need, Izzy Abanikanda as your clear number one running back. You need him to be healthy and ready to go. And so, maybe you could convince me that you, run Abanikanda out there for one series or the first quarter maybe. Maybe you could convince me that maybe you do it with Keaton Slovis too. If he's cleared and he feels good, you give him just a few drives or one quarter just to stay fresh and stay in the rhythm of the game. But I'm not pushing it with any of those guys. I'm comfortable after what I saw on Saturday night going with Nate Yarnell at quarterback against Rhode Island. I'm comfortable going with Vincent Davis and Sebo Flemister. I mean, those guys, they ran well. Davis had 83 yards in that game. Again, 53 came in the fourth quarter. Sebo Flemister had like 28 yards. He had 17 on a 3rd and 5 on the first drive. Crucial pickup by Sebo Flemister. Those guys, I'm pretty confident you can beat Rhode Island with Vincent Davis, Sebo Flemister, and Daniel Carter if you need a third guy to hand the ball to. And so if it's me, they're all taking a break. They're all getting a rest. So when Georgia Tech comes to town in 2 weeks, you have some, you feel, you feel a little closer to 100%. You're a little more those guys are a little more well rested, and those guys are a little more ready to play. And that's what I would do. But again, Pat Narduzzi's not asking me, so I can't say that decision is being made here at the Panther-Lair.com offices. But look, I don't think there's any question. Nate Yarnell, we just saw him on the screen a minute ago. I mean, he played well. He had 12 pass attempts. He ultimately dropped back to pass 14 times. There were the 12 passes he threw. There was a sack that he he took a sack. Obviously, that was a passing play. And then he had one pass to Gavin Bartholomew that was a pass interference penalty on Western Michigan. So, 14 dropbacks. All in all, maybe 3 bad throws. The rest were pretty solid, pretty safe. And part of that is by virtue of the plays that were being called, but the plays worked. You know what I mean? The passes to Jared Wayne worked. The play action throw to Gavin Bartholomew where he's wide open. That's a good play. That's a well-designed play. It's a well-called play and a well-executed play. Do those kinds of things. And then he didn't just make safe, easy throws. I would contend that every one of the throws he made to Konate Mumfield, who was 3 of 3 on his targets, and had, I think, a really good game, probably one of the unspoken heroes in this game, although he scored a touchdown. I would say all 3 of those were really good passes, and Mumfield made great plays on all 3 of them. That was quite a connection to see, and so I'm comfortable saying you can beat Rhode Island with Nate Yarnell and Flemister and Davis and those guys. I think you have to play smart here, and then move forward and hope that when you give it an extra week, when you get to that Georgia Tech game, you've got everybody or close to everybody ready to go. Of course, and I kind of talked about it a little bit with the Marquez Williams interception. The whole plan hinged on 2 things. The whole plan in that game on Saturday night hinged on 2 things. One, like I said, and it might have been the number one priority, certainly the number one priority on offense, was don't make those critical errors. Don't have the critical mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. I don't need to get into any kind of vague general talk of critical errors. Don't throw interceptions and don't fumble. Don't turn the ball over, which they didn't on offense. But the whole thing hinged on the defense playing really, really good. And the defense played really, really good. Maybe those guys were feeling some kind of way after the game last year against Western Michigan, and they felt like they should, felt like they had something to prove. This wasn't the 2021 Western Michigan offense. This wasn't the 2021 Western Michigan offensive personnel. This wasn't 2021 Western Michigan, all right, where the offense was better by virtue of the quarterback, the offensive coordinator, the wide receiver that they lost. Corey Crooms is still really good, but Sky Moore is a little bit different. It's just not as good. This offense is not as good as it was a year ago. And Pitt's defense made them pay. Pitt's defense, I think, did everything they could to get after Jack Salopek and, stuff the run and really not give up much. What did they give up? They gave up, they had, a drive, the second drive of the second half. Western Michigan's second drive of the second half. They got the ball close to midfield after Pitt punted, and they drove down and got inside the 10. And it was 1st and goal from the 7. And on 2nd down, Servassier Dennis got a sack for 8 yards, and on 3rd down, Eric Hallett made the interception in the end zone. And I talked about Marquez Williams' interceptions. Eric Hallett's picks, 2 picks, ending Western Michigan's first 2 drives of the second half. And they both, these weren't interceptions that were a result of the quarterback just, having his timing off with the receiver, and it's basically, like a punt on 3rd down, just this deep, high-arcing pass, and you got to get under it and catch it. These were big-time catches. If a wide receiver made the catches that Eric Hallett made, we would say, damn, that kid's good. I kind of made the joke that, coaches like to say that coaches like to say to defensive backs, like, if you could catch, you'd be playing receiver. And so I don't think they can say that to Eric Hallett right now, because both of those interceptions, the first one and then the one in the end zone, are really good plays. Really good plays. Not just good catches for a safety, but good catches if, Konate Mumfield or Jordan Addison or whoever made those catches, they would be considered really good catches. So huge credit to Eric Hallett. I kind of said, I don't even know who the MVP of the game is. I think it's Eric Hallett. It might be Marquez Williams. And I probably would put both of those guys ahead of Nate Yarnell and Izzy Abanikanda, even though Yarnell and Abanikanda obviously did a huge part to secure this win. But, Hallett and Williams, Pitt needed plays like that on defense. The whole thing hinged on it. And then, again, kind of later, a few other plays that sort of stood out to me. That I mentioned the Servassier Dennis sack that preceded Hallett's second interception. I think that was huge. And then a little bit later, Western Michigan, their fourth drive of the second half, probably one of their last drives of the second half. Pitt was up 27-13. Western Michigan got the ball back at their own 25. And this was the last gasp. They're down by 2 touchdowns. They've got to drive. They've got to get points if they want to have any chance of staying in this game. Solopik throws incomplete on first down, incomplete on second down, third down. He drops back to pass, and Solomon DeShields gets the sack to force the punt and basically end the game right there. There's still 7 minutes left to go, but with the way Pitt was starting to run the ball in the fourth quarter, you knew that Western Michigan wasn't going to get really another crack at it. They might get the ball back, but it would be after a long Pitt drive and probably a Pitt touchdown, which is ultimately what ended up happening. Huge play there by Solomon DeShields, running out of Pitt's Delta defensive sub package, which it was kind of curious, and I might have to go back and look at it a little bit more. I didn't feel like they used that Delta defensive sub package quite as much on third down as they typically do. And on third and longs, which could be 3rd and 6 or more, 3rd and 7 or more, depending on the offense, Pitt will switch out of its 4-3 base defense and go to the Delta defensive sub package, which 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and then bringing in an extra player in the middle of the defense. Most years it's been an extra safety. Last year it was John Patrician, who is a linebacker but a former safety, so kind of the same thing but a little bit different. So that's what they've used since Pat Narduzzi got here. His standard go-to third down defense has been that Delta package. They didn't use it as much. They stayed in their base defense quite a bit on third and long against Western Michigan, which I thought was interesting because it wasn't like Tennessee. Tennessee was rushing and going at that up-tempo rate, and so Pitt didn't always have time to sub in, but Western Michigan was not doing that. They were at a pretty slow tempo. And Pitt still sort of opted to stay with its base defense on some of those long third downs. I'm not sure what's behind that. It's probably just something they saw in Western Michigan's offense, something they were concerned about and they wanted to keep an eye on. And so they didn't do that as much. Although it's also worth noting, and this isn't necessarily connected to the Delta package, but just as we talk about the defense, by the end of the game, they were down to, I think, their available defensive ends. It was John Morgan, Chris Maloney, and I think Nikai Johnson, redshirt freshman, got in and played. I think Pro Football Focus said he played about 3 snaps. So that's all they had because Deslin Alexander didn't play. Deion Hayes didn't make the trip. Habo Baldonado and Nate Temple got hurt. And so you're down to Morgan, Maloney, and Nikai Johnson. Dicey injury situation. And I guess credit to those guys for stepping up. The other thing I wanted to talk about here on a Monday, just because it's kind of fresh news coming out yesterday about the AP poll and the coaches poll. Both got released yesterday afternoon. Pitt dropped out of the coaches poll and dropped 1 spot from 23 to 24 in the Associated Press poll. And, it does raise some, you raise your eyebrow and say, wow, you drop after a win? How can a team win and improve to 3-1 and drop a spot? And I think the reality is, at least in the AP poll, and I tend to look at that one a little bit more. Pitt was, I think, 25 in the coaches poll last week, so they just dropped 1 spot. As some other teams moved in and moved up and moved around and things like that. Washington jumped into the coaches poll, and that was ultimately who bumped Pitt out because they weren't ranked last week. But in the AP poll, really it was a swap. Texas A&M hosted Miami. Texas A&M was number 24 last week. Miami was number 13. And Texas A&M hosted Miami and beat Miami. So Texas A&M moved from 24 up to 23. Pitt dropped from 23 down to 24. Miami incidentally dropped from 13 down to 25. So they're now behind Pitt. I don't think Pitt dropping in the rankings is a reflection on Pitt as much as it's a reflection of the teams around you. I mean, most pollsters probably looked at it and said, I don't know what to do with Pitt. They won. They beat Western Michigan. Who cares? I'm not going to do enough research to find out that they had their third-string quarterback and ended up pretty much dominating a game on the road against a team that beat them last year at home, again, with their third-string quarterback and a bunch of other injuries. Most pollsters are probably not going to look that deep into it. They're going to say, I don't know what to do with this team. It's 3-1. They beat West Virginia, lost to Tennessee, and they won at Western Michigan. Well, Texas A&M just hosted a Power 5 team that's ranked in the top 15, and they won. So we need to move Texas A&M up, at least somewhat. And at least some of those pollsters felt like they had to move the Aggies up. And if they're going to go up, somebody's got to go down. And unfortunately for Pitt, like all 9 teams ranked directly ahead of them. I mean, basically Pitt was 23 and Miami was 13, and all the teams in between, 14 through 22, those 9 teams all won. So if Texas A&M is going to move up, it's not like there's an obvious candidate in those 9 teams right about Pitt who might have lost to fall down. So Pitt just sort of draws the short straw, and they fall a spot. Texas A&M goes up a spot. And there are those matrix, breakdowns out there that show how every voter voted in the polls, and you could probably look at it. I'm guessing there's not a lot of disparity there. You know what I mean? I'm guessing most people had Pitt and Texas A&M right around that 23-24 range, maybe 22 to 25, generally speaking. And ultimately, it's not a big deal. Ultimately, we're talking about September 19th, we're talking about the 3rd week of the season, polls heading into the 4th week of the season. Pitt's still in the top 25. They've been ranked in 9 consecutive Associated Press polls, and there's no reason to think that they'll drop out of this, coming week's poll. Or no, they're actually up to 10 now. I forgot, they crossed into double digits, so they have a good chance to make it to 11, after they play Rhode Island, and then you get into October. And then the style points start mattering. And then you really do want to beat up on your ACC opponents. You're not going to play games close and tight like you did on Saturday night. You're going to open it up more, and you're going to look to stretch out those leads and beat up on these guys, these other teams in the Coastal and in the ACC. And then, and likewise, all the other teams around the country are going to be playing conference games, and they're going to be losses all over the place, and you're going to have opportunities to move up. So I wouldn't get too worked up about dropping in the polls this week. I wouldn't have too much consternation about being ranked number 24. They'll if they take care of business as they should, they'll climb their way back up into the top 20 and have a chance to keep moving into the top 15 or beyond. Again, if they take care of business. Step number 1, get as many people healthy as possible. And the way to do that, don't kill them against Rhode Island. keep as many back as you can when you play against Rhode Island. All right, Pat Narduzzi's got his weekly press conference later this morning. Then we'll have interviews and videos from throughout the week. Of course, you stay tuned right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, where we release every Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the Morning Pitt. Just talking about everything that's going on. Tomorrow, we're going to break down depth chart changes and whatever Pat Narduzzi had to say today. We'll talk about that. We'll look around the Coastal and around the ACC to see what else has been happening and what those teams have been up to. And then throughout the week, we'll have previews of Rhode Island for you and talk about all the main topics, recruiting stuff, whatever else is going on with Pitt. We'll be bringing it all to you right here on the Morning Pitt. And of course, the mothership is Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Everything you could want in Pitt sports coverage is right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. So go check out the website. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We appreciate everybody for tuning in and checking this out. I had a lot of fun with it, as we always do. And looking forward to another week of doing these Morning Pitt episodes. So thank you for checking it out. Have a great rest of the night, and rest of the day, I guess, and depending on when you watch this video. And then we'll talk to you again Tuesday morning right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.